The official story was that Thabo Bester died in a prison fire, but chaos erupted when he was later spotted shopping for groceries. In this episode, we're unraveling how a convicted rapist and murderer faked his own death with a stolen corpse and easily walked out of a maximum security prison. Hey guys, and welcome to the Moms and Mysteries podcast, a true crime podcast featuring myself, Mandy, and my dear friend, Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Mandy. How are you?
I am doing wonderful, ready to record a new episode with you.
Oh, I love it. Let's do it.
So we're going to get right into the story this week. This is a wild story. It is actually not from over here in the U.S. This is a story from South Africa, and it's one of those stories that really just makes the most sense to start at the very beginning, because a guy like Thabo Bester is someone who, their red flags were practically waving before he even had a birth certificate. And I mean that literally. So he was born on June 13th, 1986 in South Africa to a woman named Maisie Mabaso, which is usually a pretty straightforward thing, right? You go to the hospital, you have a baby, you do the paperwork. That's how it always goes.
Right.
But not this time. Thabo's mother never registered his birth, which I guess I didn't think you could just do that. I thought
it was
they made
optional.
you. Right. I thought they forced you to do that before you left the hospital. But as far as the government was concerned, Thabo didn't even exist. Part of the reason was the complicated history of registration in South Africa. Thabo's mom, Maisie, herself, wasn't even registered until 2002, long after she was grown. When she was born in the 60s, her mom worked on a farm, and her employer wouldn't even let her take the day off work to file the paperwork. So when Maisie's mom died in 2002, an aunt stepped in and got the whole family registered under her surname. Maisie signed herself and her kids up, except for Thabo, because by 2002, he had already disappeared. So growing up, Thabo was a ghost in the system. He had no ID, no birth certificate, nothing. He did have some fake passports that he cobbled together later in life. Thabo said that he was raised mostly by his grandparents on their farm because his mother abandoned him. But even with Grandma and Grandpa stepping in, things were still far from ideal. Both of Thabo's grandparents were actually alcoholics. Thabo dropped out of school after the 5th grade, and by age 16, he just vanished, which is why he was never registered when the rest of his family was. Fast forward a few years, and this unregistered kid is running an events business that is somehow pulling in the equivalent of tens of thousands of US dollars per year. Thabo also became the father of 3 daughters by 3 different mothers, all by the time he was 23. The 2 oldest girls lived with him in Durban, while the youngest stayed in Cape Town with her mom. And then there's Thabo's personality. In 2011, a clinical psychologist evaluated him and found that he clearly was not someone who felt much remorse. She said Thabo was different than the rest of us, and that was never going to change. In other words, he was manipulative, dangerous, and headed for exactly what you would expect, which is a life of crime.
And here's where things take a sharp turn from shady guy with a sad childhood to full-blown predator. Thabo went on to earn himself the name the Facebook Rapist because of this very specific and very terrifying MO. He would use social media to pose as someone connected to the international modeling world to lure women in with promises of auditions, castings, and other big opportunities. Once they showed up to meet him in person, he would pull a knife on them, rob them, and in many cases, he would sexually assault them. One of Thabo's almost victims was a South African model and actress, Pearl Thusi. This was in mid-2011, and Pearl got a Facebook invite from Thabo about a supposed TV audition in Sandton. She agreed, and the 2 of them actually drove to this audition together. But at some point during the ride, Thabo pulled a knife on her and threatened to kill her. In the moment, Pearl kept her cool and managed to talk him down. At one point, she even involved her pastor in the conversation, and she later described the whole experience in the Netflix doc Beauty and the Bester. She explains how her adrenaline kicked in and her mind is racing, and she asks him, "Why are you doing this?" She said she had no idea she was dealing with a psychopath. Broke my heart. I watched this Netflix doc, or it's like a docu-series, and just hearing her relive this and talk about it, just how close she knew to he could have very easily killed her. She was very much on his list of people to kill, and she was able to really talk him out of it. She ultimately gave him a Bible in hopes of diffusing this situation, and miraculously it worked. She was able to walk away with her life.
Wow. But not everyone that Thabo encountered was that lucky. In October of 2011, he was arrested and pleaded guilty to the rape and robbery of 2 women. He was hit with a 50-year sentence, which was later reduced to 30 years. He broke down crying in court, saying that he had been sexually abused as a child as well as when he was in prison. And he told the judge, quote, "I know I've done terrible things. This is not truly who I am. I want the opportunity to put things right." But yet, before the ink was even dry on that conviction, Thabo was tied to an even darker crime. That was the murder of 26-year-old Nomfundo Tihulu, a woman Thabo had been romantically involved with. Nomfundo was a beautiful woman from South Africa who worked at a car dealership, which is where she actually met Thabo. She sold him a car, and then they struck up a long-distance relationship in early 2011. By September of that year, they were vacationing together in Cape Town. But here's the kicker. At the same time, Thabo was still facing rape and robbery charges, but Nomfundo believed that he was innocent, and she trusted and supported him. She even came to his defense when others would question his character. On September 21st, 2011, the two of them were staying at a bed and breakfast in Cape Town. Sometime around 2 a.m., while Nomfundo was sleeping, Thabo slipped out of the room, went into the kitchen, and grabbed a knife. He claimed his intention was to threaten her into handing over her laptop and phone, but Nomfundo woke up when he returned to the room and a struggle between them broke out, and she was stabbed once in the chest. That single blow was fatal.
One thing in the doc that was interesting is this bed and breakfast that they stayed at. It was only either the first or second night it was open. Like this lady and her husband opened this. Yeah. And this was like their inaugural people that were coming in. But it was just, I can't imagine being like, this is our new business and doing this and this happens. Because you'd be like, we're closing our business. Right. I can't do this. This is terrible. But what happens next is both chilling and really baffling. Thabo tied Nomfundo's hands behind her back and demanded her laptop password. But by then, she was bleeding out and she was unresponsive. I can't believe he stabs her and then is like, what's your password?
Like, what on earth?
Absolutely insane and so gross. And, he's just wicked. So instead of panicking and calling for help like a sane person might do, he just stayed there for 5 hours. Exactly what he did during that time is unknown, but eventually at around 7 a.m., he strolled out and asked this owner of the bed and breakfast for a ride into central Cape Town. He was completely casual, as though nothing happened. He actually told the owner that Nomfundo was asleep and to not wake her up until after 2 o'clock, knowing full well that she is dead in the room.
Wild.
And the way I understood it is he was like, I'm going to go out for a little bit and come back. But I think when the husband took him, he was like, no, just bring me to the train station. So Thabo hopped on a plane to Durban and left Nomfundo's family to pick up the pieces. What was extra sad about this is she was actually the financial backbone for her mom and sisters. And so her death really devastated them anyway, but it really financially ruined them. They struggled to even afford her burial. In court, Thabo claimed that he did not know why he killed Nomfundo and said it was a mistake, which is one very not remorseful thing you could say. But the judge wasn't buying it. He says there's a difference between regret and true remorse, and his crocodile tears weren't fooling anyone. He was then sent to the second largest maximum security private prison in the world, Mangaung Correctional Center. But then came the plot twist of the century. On May 3rd, 2022, officials at the prison found Thabo dead in his cell. As for the scene, there was a body under a mattress, which had been set on fire. The mattress was set on fire, and the remains were burned beyond recognition. And you will not believe what actually happened, and we will get into more after a quick break to hear a word from this week's sponsors. Mandy, you know how we'll spend all this time on skincare routines or picking up the right vitamins, but we tend to forget about the organ that's basically pulling overtime every single day.
You must be talking about the liver. That's our body's built-in filter that handles over 500 functions. I didn't think much about my liver either until I tried Dose for Your Liver. It's a little daily shot that helps flush out unwanted elements, aids digestion, and keeps that filter doing its job.
And the science behind it is really what hooked me. In a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, dose lowered liver enzyme levels by 50% in over 86% of participants. And instead of choking down turmeric shots, one dose equals 17 of those. I'll take the one and done, thanks.
Same. Plus, it's gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, and vegan, so it fits into anyone's routine. I just keep mine in the fridge, grab it in the morning, and feel like I'm actually doing something for an organ that deserves way more credit. Save 25% on your first month of subscription by going to dosedaily.co/moms or entering moms at checkout. That's dosedaily.co/moms for 25% off your first month subscription.
Every fall, I tell myself I'm finally going to get pieces that actually feel good and look good, not just another sweater that ends up itchy or stretched out after 2 washes.
Me too. And that's why I like Quince. They make it so easy to upgrade your wardrobe with elevated essentials that are polished but still super cozy.
We've talked about it before, but their cashmere sweaters are unbelievably comfortable, like actually wear them every day comfortable. But the other night I was perusing the site and I found the perfect fall shoe. It's the water-repellent suede clog mule. I cannot wait for mine to get here. They're so cute and they go with everything.
And that's what I love. Whether it's cashmere, silk, denim, or those clogs, you're getting luxury quality without the crazy markup. Quince partners with ethical, top-tier factories, cuts out the middlemen, and delivers pieces that look designer level but cost a fraction of the price. It just feels like the smart, stylish way to refresh your fall wardrobe. Keep it classic and cozy this fall with long-lasting staples from Quince. Go to quince.com/moms for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/moms to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/moms.
And now back to the episode.
Thabo Bester started his life as a ghost in the system, as we mentioned before the break. He had no birth registration, a really chaotic childhood, and a knack for manipulating people. He became known as the Facebook rapist who lured women with promises of fake modeling gigs, and in 2011, one of those women was found dead at the hands of Thabo. He was convicted of her murder, but years later, he was found dead under a burning mattress in his prison cell. An investigation was launched, and immediately the details started to look suspicious. For starters, Thabo had been moved to a corner cell that same night, and this is a cell that the CCTV cameras conveniently couldn't see clearly. At 2:59 a.m., cameras showed 2 people hustling out of the prison, and 1 minute later, smoke was reported. By 4 a.m., smoke was visibly pouring from Thabo's cell. Someone tried to call the local police station at 4:25 a.m., but the number didn't work. And at 5 a.m., this is how much time has passed between 2:59 a.m. and now 5 a.m., the prison is finally calling the emergency services number. At 5:10, the body in the cell, which was labeled as Thabo Bester, was pronounced dead. Now, the police still didn't even arrive until 6:45 a.m., which is kind of bizarre for these circumstances. And investigators noted that the cell was isolated. And of course, they asked these obvious questions like, how did the fire start? Did Thabo die before the fire or during? And how do we know that the body is even Thabo Bester? Authorities did confirm that inmates who smoke were allowed to have lighters, so theoretically it was possible that an inmate could start a fire. That was wild to me, that a maximum security prison, like this isn't like slap on the wrist, you're just in jail for a few months, like you can have a lighter. This is like maximum security prison. That's wild to me that any inmate was able to have a lighter at all. That's crazy.
And I feel like you would, after that, if my neighbor got a lighter for, because they smoked and I didn't, I'd be like, great, I like to eat steaks. Can I have a knife?
Right.
And let's see how this works.
Exactly. By November of 2022, DNA testing still had not been done on the remains that were found in the cell. Essentially, they were saying they could confirm Thabo died and that an inquest was open, but they were waiting on the forensics and these, medical and legal reports. DNA was allegedly taken from the corpse that they found, but the results were still pending. And when you consider that the national DNA backlog is 71,000 cases, is very much like a hurry up and wait for that kind of situation.
For sure. Reporting from Ground Up, it's a media place in South Africa, that November, they boiled the case down to 4 possibilities. The first is that Thabo killed himself by fire. The second was that Thabo died in an accidental fire. The third was Thabo was murdered before the fire. And the fourth was that it wasn't Thabo at all and he had actually escaped. At that point, though, the idea of escape seemed pretty far-fetched. Then, in January of 2023, some results were back, and the postmortem report said the victim died before the fire by blunt force injury to the head. And although Thabo was listed as 5'7" in police reports, the charred remains were only about 4'9" in length. A pathologist did say the height could be misread on burned remains, but that's quite a difference. Mandy, that's kind of like the difference between me and you.
It's a whole foot just about, yeah.
It really is, yeah. Like, it's different. It's not the same at all. That's a huge difference. The coroner also noted the smell of an accelerant in the airway of the victim. So the manner of death was changed from suicide to murder. After Thabo's death, 3 officers at the prison were fired, including the officer who put Thabo in that cell where his body was found. The others that were fired were 2 of the control room officers that were on duty that night of the fire. Yeah, some people need to get fired if no one's calling
For sure.
the fire department, and people are just running willy-nilly out of this prison. It's crazy. And that's when Dr. Nandipha Magudumana entered the picture. She's a celebrity physician and this polished public figure, but that's not the only way she presented herself. She also said that she was Thabo Bester's customary law wife. In the immediate aftermath of the fire, she's actually the person who collected the body that was found under the mattress, this body that supposedly her customary law husband, Thabo. However, almost as soon as she got the body, the police took it back, which was actually standard procedure so the autopsy could be done.
I didn't know they did that. Like, they're just moving the bodies around like that? Like, that to me is why would you release the body to family if you had still needed it for autopsy?
I don't get that at all. Yeah, you definitely think they'd be like, actually, one more day.
Right.
And then we're going to release it. That doesn't make any sense to me. But while that was happening, another plot twist came out. Authorities actually took DNA from a woman who identified herself as Thabo's mother. But that supposed mother wasn't actually a match to the body.
Wild. So by May 19th, just over 2 weeks after this fire, Dr. Nandipha went to the High Court to ask that the body be returned to her so that she would be able to bury Thabo, her customary law husband. And she also asked for an independent autopsy. She argued that as Thabo's spouse under customary law, the burial rights belonged to her, which sounds great on paper, but in practice, this is kind of a whole nightmare. So
yeah,
in order to really explain what's even happening here, you're probably, wondering what exactly is a customary law marriage and who is this woman to Thabo? So we're going to get to that in just a minute. But the question of who had the right to bury the body became a thing in the case. In a reply affidavit to the doctor's application, the lead investigator said the police no longer had the remains because they were claimed by a woman named Maisie Babaso, which is Thabo's biological mother. The police said that if Dr. Nandipha wanted the body, she should go get it from Thabo's mom, which, again, they're just able to move this body around at will? I don't
what
understand.
are we doing?
I know. So, however, when Ground Up talked to Maisie, she said that's actually not what happened at all. She said that she did try to claim the body, but officials wouldn't release it to her because her DNA didn't match the corpse in question, which brings us back to an earlier theory that the victim was not Thabo at all.
But also, Maisie could not be the mom. That's the other thing.
Right.
We don't have records of this guy. She took her aunt's surname and all that other stuff. So,
we don't know
this
who's
has to
who.
be so confused. Yeah,
Right.
Who's telling the truth?
Right. But in the case that the remains were not Thabo, then whose were they? So Maisie confirmed that her relationship with her son was strained and he had been raised by his grandmother. She also said she had no idea he was married to Dr. Nandipha, so that makes things really super awkward. So we have a celebrity doctor insisting on burial rights, this mom who can't claim a body that supposedly belongs to her son, and a paper trail that really just cannot agree on who even is in possession of these remains at this time. So yeah, it's like a chain of chaos really is happening here.
For sure. So let's talk a little more about Dr. Nandipha. On paper, she's a high overachiever with a sparkly origin story. She grew up in Eastern Cape, South Africa, and by the age of 6, she knew she wanted to become a doctor. She was quoted in Mail and Guardian as saying, quote, "My mother was in hospital for a while, and I never understood the complexity of her condition at the time. And when I was around doctors, I felt empowered, confident, and fearless," end quote. From there, she strived for academic excellence and eventually earned both a BSc in health sciences and a Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery, which is the U.S. equivalent of an MD. She worked at a couple of different hospitals where she touched on aesthetics, dermatology, plastic surgery, and pharmaceuticals. In 2013, she had gotten married to a pediatrician that had his own practice, and the couple had 2 daughters. They divorced in 2022, but they remained listed as married in South Africa's Home Affairs database. So in 2017, she founded Optimum Medical Aesthetic Solutions, where she offered skincare and aesthetic treatments, and soon she became this bona fide celebrity doctor. She had over 124,000 Instagram followers, she had partnerships, and she collected awards and certificates of recognition. Her persona was very lavish. Her Instagram showed new cars, VIP hangouts with South African celebrities, including a former president, as well as sponsorships from big brands. And here's where business and romance collide. So in her own court filings, Dr. Nandipha said she first met Thabo back in 2006 while she was at university, but the two lost touch in 2011, which for Thabo was like his peak evil era, so probably a great time to lose touch of him at that time. She ended up reaching out to him in 2017 and began visiting him in prison and evidently started managing his life behind bars. She also deposited money into his prison account and acted as his fixer when he had a problem or concern. Dr. Nandipha would speak to the lawyers on his behalf. And I'm talking, this guy you're going to see is busy in prison. He's not just lighting things up. He's so busy.
It's crazy when you realize how, like, for Thabo, like, this is brilliant, right? Because he himself certainly can't speak to authorities, and because he is genuinely a dangerous person, a danger to society.
Right.
So who better to speak on his behalf than this celebrity doctor that's well respected? It's, so he's like, yeah, baby, please tell the police that talk to my lawyers, make me sound great, and they're going to listen to you. You're going to be more effective at this than I ever could be. So it's sick how people
It was
do
all
this
perfect
kind of
for
thing.
him. It was good for him and him alone.
So by February of 2020, Thabo had proposed to Dr. Nandipha, and so they got married under customary law. Customary law is legally defined as the customs and usages traditionally observed among the indigenous African peoples of South Africa, and which form part of the culture of those peoples. So under South Africa's Recognition of Customary Marriages Act, which was established in 1998, the marriage is valid if both parties are over 18, if they give consent to marry, and the union is negotiated and celebrated per customary law. So the negotiation part refers to lobolo, which is a bride price, and it's usually paid with cattle. And the prospective husband gives it to the head of the prospective wife's family, most likely her father.
I know about this from 90 Day Fiancé. All the freaking time they were having to deal with somebody from the U.S. who didn't have enough money to buy cattle, and it was always an issue. But that was literally what it always is.
Yeah,
it's cattle.
Yeah. So meanwhile, from inside the prison, Thabo was busy building empires. In 2018, he launched 20th Century Media, which was a scam outfit deliberately named to echo 20th Century Fox and be confusing. And it was registered to a woman who was the sole director of this company. But this woman also fronted 11 other lookalike companies that had like a similar thing going on, trying to be intentionally confusing and acting like they were affiliated with something legitimate. But that woman later said that both Thabo and Nandipha scammed her and cost her money. Thabo built himself a bogus resume with the name Tom Motsepe, where he claimed to hold a bachelor's degree in business administration and management from the University of Cape Town and a bachelor's degree from Harvard in investment and securities. However, upon investigating, Harvard does not even offer such a degree. So, yeah, you might want to do a little bit of research before you start claiming stuff on your fake resume. So Thabo, or as he's now going by Tom, claimed he owned 33.5% of Viacom and 12.9% of 20th Century Fox.
Sir,
Where's
that is
your
a
money?
little too far.
Where's
That's
all
a
your
little
money?
too far.
Right.
Yeah.
He called himself a thought leader and a progressive and innovative businessman. There was even a Twitter account for Tom with images of Tabo's face photoshopped onto celebrities, including Michael B. Jordan.
Unreal. And these
Bizarre.
are, yeah, this
Have
is
you
like,
seen them, the photos?
yeah. They're they're in the documentary. But there's one specific one in the car where I'm like, what is happening? But this is like, we should not have canceled the show Catfish. The show Catfish just got canceled this year. Now we have AI. We have people doing stuff like this. We need it now more than ever for things like this. So in 2018, this company hosted a Women in Media conference, which sold tickets and advertised celebrity speakers like Halle Berry and Taraji Henson, who both publicly stated they were not part of this event, which resulted in the host backing out and the event being canceled. It was such a disaster that it actually made headlines in South Africa, which I can imagine for Tabo/Tom, that's probably not great for you to have headlines like this. But at a different event that actually did occur, this Tom, which is Thabo again, he video called in from prison, but he had on a crisp shirt and tie and claimed he was in New York. This is like a huge screen that's out there. This guy is sitting with a white wall behind him, and he's wearing a shirt and tie, and there's these like two gorgeous women standing up on the stage pointing to him. The whole audience sings happy birthday to him, and he's meanwhile zooming from prison, and they have no idea.
Insane.
Unreal. Because I'm like, isn't prison loud? Are they not going to hear people screaming? What is happening in this prison? But within 20th century media, Tom seemed legit and seemed like someone who knew the industry, had money to spend, and recruited talent from real companies. He had 30 employees working for him, and they all believed that Tom was just in New York and they were dealing with a time difference, not like him being thrown in the shoe. There was actually just a time difference. So Tom would give instructions to employees while a managing director was in charge of the day-to-day operations. Unreal.
It's
unreal.
It's wild to think that anyone could do this.
Absolutely. So money seemed to flow through the company, yet nothing was really happening. The company would hold auditions for projects that never ended up being filmed. But how was he able to do this from behind bars, you might wonder? Well, cell phone smuggling is a pretty well-known problem in South African prisons. It happens in the U.S. too, for sure. And Thabo was allowed to have a laptop if he was in a degree program, which he allegedly was. Unreal that you're just like, hey, I smoke. Can I have a lighter? Hey, I'm in a program. Can I have a laptop? And they just give it to you. Obviously, it's more than that, but it's crazy.
Yeah.
So, of course, this explains how he was able to run a fake company from prison despite it being illegal to do so on top of that. And this wasn't the only prison-run company that Thabo had a hand in. In 2017, there was a construction company called Aram Properties. This company put money into Thabo's prison account, according to records. In 2020, Thabo and Nandipha created a company called iMedia, which Nandipha is the sole director of. I was like, iMedia, is that supposed to be like iPhone, iPad,
it's meant
like
to be
Apple
intentionally
stuff?
confusing, right?
Exactly. People who had interactions with this company reported that they had video calls with a man who resembled Thabo. Of course you did. In the months and weeks leading up to the fire, Nandipha made several property rentals and hotel visits under Thabo's alias, that Tom name, or under her own alias. The Airbnb booking was made under the name TK Nwana, and the same profile had made several bookings for luxury properties. Nandipha and her children, remember she has 2 kids, he has 3, stayed at a mansion from March 12th through 14th. On March 24th, Nandipha checked into a luxury hotel 30 minutes away from the prison, and she stayed at the hotel again from April 13th through 14th. And believe it or not, we still have so much more to get into after a quick break to hear a word from this week's sponsors. And now back to the episode.
So before the break, we were talking really all about how a burning mattress turned into this whole insane chain of events. And as if this story hasn't been wild enough, we have a plot twist within a plot twist. In June of 2002, a shopper at Woolworths in Sandton City spotted Dr. Nandipha with her daughter and a man who looked a whole lot like Thabo Bester. She snapped some photos and sent them to Ground Up, but those images didn't make it to the public until March of 2023. The photographer said that she recognized the doctor because her friend is a fan, but she was actually surprised to see the doctor with a man who definitely was not her husband. The photographer didn't recognize Thabo at all. The authorities had to respond very carefully. They really didn't have the equipment or the forensic accreditation to verify the photos or to verify this man's real identity. But the rumor mill was definitely abuzz. People were alleging that Thabo was living with Dr. Nandipha in a rented mansion in Santon. So then in March of 2023, the Department of Correctional Services finally confirmed what some people were already thinking. The burned body found in the prison cell was not Thabo Bester. The real Thabo, get this, had actually escaped from prison. It was reported that the authorities knew this as early as October of 2022. Evidence indicated that there was a fire that was staged and a corpse was smuggled into Thabo's cell to fake his death and facilitate his escape.
I get people breaking out of prison, but it's not often you hear somebody being broken into prison. That's wild. Yeah.
Crazy. So the day before they announced this, it was reported that a prison guard had been emailing the deputy minister since June of 2022 saying Thabo was gone. And this guard said that everyone at the prison knew the body wasn't him and that the protocols hadn't been followed, that it was really likely an inside job by the night shift staff. In late March 2023, the security company contracted with the prison, G4S, was booted from running security there, and a temporary manager took over. The national commissioner called this a necessary remedy after an embarrassing incident that undermined the authority of the state. And this actually wasn't the first time that G4S had been removed from this prison. They were also kicked out in 2013 after a guard was abducted.
Goodness. So Thabo's life on the run was somehow both brazen as well as sloppy. In July of 2022, he was stopped for speeding. Thabo handed over a fake ID, which the officers immediately clocked as being fake, but they still didn't look into it or take him in. They issued a court notice and sent him on his way, having no idea they had just encountered Thabo Bester. I will say for Thabo Bester, he looks different in every picture you see him in, not just when he puts his face on Michael B. Jordan's body, but just in general, he looks so different. His hair, everything can change so much. Like, he just looks different in everything. So later, those two officers got written warnings for failing to check whether or not this obviously suspicious man was linked to other crimes. Of course, that would have been policy. After his escape, Thabo went into business with Aram Properties and teamed up with Dr. Nandipha. Clients paid millions of dollars for construction that never happened. And at this time, Thabo was going by TK Nwana, and he had a driver's license, an ID, and a fake ID number to go along with it. One person who met him in July of 2022 said that TK, or Thabo, tried to pay them to fly to Cape Town and pose in houses that Aram Properties was allegedly renovating. But they said the vibes were weird, so they declined. I can't imagine somebody wanting you to go to properties that aren't theirs to take pictures. I mean, if you knew the story, obviously that's where the vibes would
be weird. Yeah.
Fall off.
Yeah.
But Thabo used Aram Properties and iMedia accounts that were linked to Dr. Nandipha's Instagram and actually targeted influencers. He would try to lure them to audition for a fake Netflix show called Hot Property Chick, which I was like, listen, I mean, there was a show called F-Boy Island, so I don't feel like Hot Property Chick is the craziest, but I do love that this was on Netflix that he was saying it, and the docuseries later is on Netflix. So inside Aram, Thabo ran the day-to-day while Dr. Nandipha kept her medical practice going. And Thabo wasn't even trying to hide. He was meeting clients in broad daylight. Work was subcontracted to other companies, but little was actually being done. Items would be added to invoices without the client's approval, and then everything administratively was very, very slow. Thabo was said to be difficult to work with and hot-headed, especially when clients had questions about budgets and schedules, like the things they would definitely need to know about. So he had several different phone numbers, so getting in touch and communicating with him was challenging. And the contracts he gave clients listed Aram Properties, but no such company was registered with the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission. But the Aram Properties website from 2021 has a selection of construction projects the company says it's responsible for, but it has been determined that the photos are stolen from other places online.
So Tabo and Dr. Nandipha even hosted a women in property brunch at the mansion. The event description said that in celebration of Women's Month, Aram Properties would like to treat you, a pioneer in the industry, to an exquisite brunch and all things property. Meanwhile, the couple was allegedly behind on their rent for the mansion. They had also rented the house that was right next door and were using Aram Properties to renovate it and supposedly turn it into a new clinic for the doctor. But after Ground Up published its first article in March of 2023, alleging that Tabo may still be alive, he and Nandipha abandoned their rented mansion and left all their belongings inside. Around the same time, Nandipha deactivated all of her business Instagram accounts that were associated with her personal account, which, by the way, is now private. The last post to her clinic's account was made in early February 2023. Finally, on April 7th, 2023, the manhunt ended in Tanzania near the Kenyan border. Police arrested Tabo and Dr. Nandipha, but they were not by themselves. A man from Mozambique was helping them as they were in Tanzania illegally. They were found with several passports that had different names on them, and police believed they were headed for the border. Tabo had an American passport in the name of Tom Williams Kelly, and authorities were actually unable to determine whether that passport was real or fake, which is also wild to me.
And terrifying.
So scary.
Who is Tom Williams Kelly?
Right. Dr. Nandipha had 3 passports with her. One was her own, and the other 2 belonged to someone named Dr. Mareka. So one of her passports was expired, but this doctor said that her passport was actually stolen in 2019. She had reported it stolen, and she reported it stolen again in 2023. But then she later told the police that she gave her valid passport, gave it to Dr. Nandipha and a man named TK. So they obviously could supposedly apply for a U.S. Work citizenship, I guess, on her behalf. That was a story that they had told this woman. They're going to use her passport and apply. I know. What kind of business was that for? I have no idea.
Unreal. So police in Tanzania were able to identify the pair and followed them after they left their hotel. After the arrest, everyone understood that they would be extradited to South Africa. They determined that Nandipha failed to pick her daughters up from school before her arrest, which provided a clue for exactly when they left. Back home in South Africa, police arrested Sinohi Matsora and Zalile Sekaleni on charges including murder, defeating the ends of justice, aiding an escape, and intentionally killing a person. One was a former prison guard who also faced charges of arson. But Zalile was Nandipha's father, and he was also charged with fraud. He is in this documentary. I did not understand what the heck he was being charged with or why he was being charged with it from the research or from that. It was just, he just seemed like he got caught in something he didn't even know was happening. So the other guard had worked in Tabo's cell block on the night of the escape, and friends say that his lifestyle took a lavish turn after Thabo escaped, allegedly paid for with escape money from Thabo. He was suspended and then ultimately fired from the prison. Dr. Nandipha's dad was let out on bail. In late April 2023, the body found in Tabo's cell was identified as a man named Katlego Bering. His parents divorced when he was young, and he was raised by his grandmother, Alice. His mother remarried, and he sometimes used his father's surname. Katlego had 2 young children, and he was described as being a loving father who always tried to support his family even when he was unemployed. He trained to be a paramedic, and he also worked as a waiter. Katlego was very involved with a local football club. In March of 2022, when he was 30 years old, he went missing, but his family didn't report him missing until May. In May of 2023, which is a year later, Katlego's mom was contacted by the police and asked to take 2 DNA tests. She was then informed that her son had died. An autopsy determined that he died from blunt force injury to the head, but his family was really given confusing information. They were told he had collapsed in the city center and was being taken to a hospital, and also that he was injured and taken to the hospital, but he passed away. So not really a straight story that they're getting. His father said he planned to sue the government to get answers about his son's death. It was reported that his son lived near and knew Sinohi.
By May, the case had grown to include 8 people who faced charges tied to Thabo's escape and Katlego's murder. 4 of them were ex-prison employees who were found to have contributed to this plot. They did different things, from letting the vehicle carrying Katlego's body into the prison and opening the doors so Thabo could escape. Dr. Nandipha's father was accused of hiring the vehicle used to transport the body. In total, there were 16 charges between these 8 individuals. Prosecutors said that sometime between the April 7 to 22nd window, the group had claimed an unidentified morgue body, which they said was Nandipha's father. Maybe that's where the fraud came in.
Okay, that makes more sense, but I don't know.
Yeah. But when that plan fell through, they dumped the body in a river, that body that they had claimed and said that it was her father. They dumped that body in a river because the plan fell through. So they're just like, oh, I guess we don't need this now. We'll just toss it in a river. And
Wow.
they staged a fake funeral. They buried a coffin filled with cornmeal, or some reports actually say it was rotten meat that they used to fill this coffin to, I guess, get away with this. Money to the funeral home was traced to Aram Properties. Next, they posed as hospital staff to claim what's believed to be Kutlego's body. They said that it belonged to an acquaintance's brother, which, again, in this story, I am mind blown at how easy it is to claim a corpse. I just didn't
Totally.
know that people could do that. You could just go into a hospital and say, "This is my friend's brother. Can I take the body?" Like, what?
Yeah,
No.
that is it's different to say this is my, sister, this is my whatever, but to be like, I kind of know this guy and that's his brother.
Right.
Can I take him out?
Right.
And they're like, sure. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's not connecting for me. But when the conspirators arrived at the prison with the body, the vehicle wasn't even inspected. The body was inside a TV cabinet that was placed in the workshop, and then the next day, the body was moved to a trash can with a lid and, with wheels, and that was taken to Tabo's cell. When the fire began, the supervisor allegedly did nothing to extinguish it. It was others who later came to put it out. Tabo was smuggled out in a guard uniform.
So after being arrested, Dr. Nandipha asked the court for release from prison, arguing that her arrest in Tanzania was unlawful. She said she was blindfolded, abducted, and subjected to a quote-unquote disguised extradition. But the government had evidence that she complied with the arrest, and she offered no verbal or physical resistance and knew exactly why she was being arrested. In June of 2023, a 9th person was arrested in this case. A man named Zonda Moyo was charged with violating a body, fraud, and harboring and concealing an escaped convict. He is the man who the others claimed Kutlego was related to in order to take possession of his body. By the end of June, 3 more prison security officers were arrested and charged, bringing the total number of people accused in Tabo's escape to 12. In September, Nandipha was denied bail. She tried to allege that Thabo kidnapped her and took her to Tanzania against her will, but it was found that she was a flight risk, and there was no evidence that she was ever forced to do anything against her will. She willingly left the country with Thabo. One thing I didn't see in this, but it is talked about and played in the documentary, is Thabo talking to Nandipha, like screaming at her, yelling at her on phone calls and saying, I know what you're wearing. I have people watching you. If you don't do this, I will kill you. But like incredibly violent ways of saying that. And so some people did feel for her and said like at some point it probably got over her head, but I don't know. They're still looking into all of that. In October, charges against 3 of the conspirators were dropped, and another had their charges dropped later. In 2025, Nandipha appealed the decision about her release, but her appeal was also denied. As of June 2025, the trial for all the accused is set for November of 2025, so just in a little over a month. It's already been delayed several times, and the judge in the case warned all the accused that there should not be any more delays in the trial. There was supposed to be a hearing on September 19th, but we're not sure if that has actually happened. Earlier this month, September of 2025, Netflix released a docuseries about Thabo Bester and Dr. Nandipha called Beauty and the Bester. They actually both submitted requests to the South African court to stop the docuseries from airing. The request was denied, and the show was released as scheduled.
What a wild story. I cannot believe that they had charged 12 people total with getting this one guy out of prison.
A convicted murderer and rapist that 12 people were willing to get arrested for. One thing that was very interesting in the docuseries is they show, I guess, like court looks a little bit different, and Dr. Nandipha and Thabo are sitting together in court, and there's like people all in the background, and they're like smiling at each other, could not be more affectionate looking at each other. So whatever this whole like I was being kidnapped from here or
Right.
there thing is not going to hold up well if you saw that. It was weird. And then Tabo gets up and like screams about something. It was wild to watch. So if you get a chance to watch the docuseries, you definitely should. But what a crazy story.
Absolutely crazy. I didn't get to watch all of the docuseries. I did turn on the first episode and I was distracted while I had it on. But man, yeah, 3 episodes worth of information about this case. So I'm really excited to kind of go try and finish it. I'll be doing that probably while I'm taking my walks. I'll try and finish that. But yeah, super wild story. I definitely can't wait to find out what actually happens. Hopefully that trial goes off, next month or in a couple months,
Right.
and we can kind of see where everything lands. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's truly wild and always is fascinating. I know I always say it's fascinating to see how things are done in other places. Like
Yeah.
how cases are investigated. Like you were even saying, like having the two defendants basically sitting next to each other and able to like talk to each other. Like that's also not something that we see here. So it's
Yeah.
always fascinating and interesting to do a case like this.
For sure.
All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, new story.
Have a great week.
Bye.